Good morning, everyone. We just heard that amazing story of David and Goliath proclaimed so well by our sixth graders. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you have heard this story before this morning? Right, so a lot of you have. That's not a surprise because it's one of the most famous stories in all of the Old Testament. Even people who don't believe in God are familiar with the story of David and Goliath. And one of the key things we learn from this story is that all things are possible with God. How many of you believe that? How many believe that all things are possible with God? I believe it, and David believed it. David believed it when he faced Goliath. And David was a boy. Goliath was a man. He was a big man. He was a fierce warrior. It would be like if one of you St. Leo students got in a boxing ring against a professional heavyweight prize fighter. Nobody would expect that to go very well for you. And nobody expected it to go very well for David. But David put his faith in God, and he prevailed against Goliath. And as I was praying and reflecting on this reading this week, as I was praying and reflecting on the fact that all things are possible with God, I was reminded of a time when I was in middle school. And I had a big test one day. Now, I don't remember the subject. It wasn't history because when I was in school they didn't have history yet. But whatever the subject, I was really worried that I wouldn't do well in the test. And so I prayed. I prayed so hard. God, please help me to do well in this test. God, if you help me to do well in this test, I promise that I will be nice to my sister for a whole month. Now, I felt pretty good about that prayer because I knew that all things were possible with God. And so I took the test, and guess what? I did horribly. I failed the test, and I was so mad. I was so mad at God. God, why didn't you help me? I asked for your help, and you didn't help me. Well, at least I didn't have to be nice to my sister, but I was still mad. And then a little while later, I had another test coming up. And I was worried again that I wouldn't do well. And so I made the same prayer. God, please help me. Help me to do well in this test. I promise. If you help me to do well, I will be nice to my sister for a whole month. Now, it didn't work out so well the first time, but I still had faith. I had faith that all things were possible with God. And so I took the test, and guess what? I did great. I passed. I got 100%. I never did so well on a test. And so I thought about it, and I went back to God, and I said, you know, God, it turns out I didn't need your help after all. I knew all the answers. I guess I don't have to be nice to my sister. If I ever need you in the future, I'll just let you know. Now, how many of you think that I was wrong the first time when I thought God didn't help me? How many? A lot of you, right? How many of you think I was wrong the second time when I said I did it all myself without God's help? How many of you think I should be nice to my sister no matter what? Yeah, almost all the girls, right? Well, you're right. I was wrong the first time. And I was wrong the second time. And I should be nice to my sister all the time. Because here's the deal, right? Even though all things are possible with God, that doesn't mean that I don't have any responsibility. I do. You know, I failed that first test because I didn't prepare. I didn't study. And I passed the second test because I did prepare. I was prepared. I studied. Right? But both times, God helped me. God helped me to do the best that I could do with the preparation that I had made. And so, yes, all things are possible with God. God helps us no matter what. But we have to help God to help us. We have to do our part so that God can do God's part. Now, David, although he was mismatched against Goliath, was prepared. He brought his stone, he brought his sling, and he practiced. He worked with it beforehand. He knew exactly what he needed to do in order to defeat Goliath because he was prepared. And God helped him to do the best he could do with the preparation that he made. Now, thankfully, you and I are probably never going to be in a war in the field of battle like David was. But we do need God. And so I'll ask you to think about this question. Think about it to yourself. How do I need God today? And how can I help God to help? How can I help God to help me? This morning, we gather together as a community of faith to listen to God's holy word, to be nourished by the precious body and blood of our Lord Jesus. It is appropriate for us to thank God for making all things possible. May we have the strength and the courage to prepare and to do all we can to help God to help us.